Shalom, this is your host, Pastor Enoch Phiri. Welcome to The Journey, a program where we profile members of our society who have made it to the top by the help of the Holy Spirit. Today in the studio, I have Sister Dawn. Welcome to the show, ma'am.
Thank you for having me.
We'll continue looking at your story.
Yeah.
You know, last week, before we just closed our program, you spoke about your trip to the United States. Can you tell us more about that?
Yes, I went and did, what was it called? Camp USA.
Okay.
In high school, my high school provided a mini version of a psychology degree for those who'd be counseling and program design and creation, and I'd participated in that. And when I found out there was Camp America taking place, I needed a break post my challenges with weight and having gone through the experience of being anorexic. Okay. And so I just needed to cut off everything. And I went to the United States. In the end, I started in London for a few weeks and then went to be in the US, I think, for about 3 months in the end. And I think whilst I was there, the greatest blessing for me was seeing life without borders. Seeing all the things that God had created, but also seeing other young people in the United States, seeing what dreams they had, for all the love and hate people have for the people of the United States. They're very bold people. They're very audacious people. They have dreams. They are entrepreneurs. They encourage their kids they have this sense of, it's the American dream. And so everyone lives in this ideology of finding what is yours. And I think for me, that was the first time it broke things in me of not wanting to find the dreams of my parents, the dreams of even my community, but wanting to find and search for my own place in the world. I started believing that, okay, I didn't just happen by chance, regardless of the circumstances of my conception. Me being here, the fact that it worked out and I came and I lived and I'm here meant that therefore God also had a plan for me, and that plan was specific and personal to me. And I think that for me, that was one of the biggest things. And when I came back, I was quite determined to find my own place. And I was determined that circumstances wouldn't limit me. Regardless of what happens, I would fall and I would get up. And so one of my personal mottos is that I am never defined by my circumstances. Stuff happens to me, stuff happens around me, stuff happens through me, but I'm not that stuff. Absolutely. I'm not the culmination of circumstances, And I think that then has played a very big role in how I see the world. I am, of course, a citizen of South Africa, but more importantly, I'm a citizen of the human race. Absolutely. And I'm a citizen of a global space. And so I'm constantly thinking about how I fit in the bigger picture first that God has designed for me before I limit myself to just being a citizen of South Africa. And I think that when our young people start to see themselves in that way, when women specifically start seeing themselves in being bigger and being more than just where they are, that's when we will see an evolution of our world. That's when we will see change happening in this space, because you are now not just thinking about the 9 to 5, You're not just thinking about the today. That's when we begin to create sustainable legacies for ourselves and for the next generation. So I encourage people, if you can't go overseas, because everyone doesn't have the capacity to perhaps do that, go to the next community. Absolutely. You live in Durban, get on a bus and go to Johannesburg. You live in the farm areas, get on a bus and go to Durban. When you step out of what you are comfortable with, when you step out of what you are used to, it challenges the spirit in you to demand more of life. And God says, I've brought you here so you can live life and live it more abundantly. I've brought you here so that you fit into the bigger space. But when you set boundaries on yourself that God hasn't placed on you, you are limited in how you dream. You are limited in the different things that exist within the world, because you don't see them as opportunities. You don't see them as doors, because you are waiting for specific things that you have seen previously. God always says, look, I'm doing a new thing. Do you see it? And He's constantly doing a new thing. And I think that if you are living here, you blind yourself to being able to see that new thing and therefore know how to step into it. God wants us to be audacious young girls. God wants us to be audacious women who fully rise up and do the things we need to do. But mostly He wants us to find complete restoration, and again, that comes from understanding Him, that comes from understanding the world and understanding your place in that space. And I think for me, really traveling at such a young age, is the thing, because it changed. Then I wasn't, and there's no disrespect about having some of the jobs that are 9 to 5, but it changed my demands on life.
Absolutely.
I felt, one, I had a right to demand more on life. Two, I knew that I had the responsibility to then do something so that that demand comes to pass. And three, I then didn't settle until I had it, you know, like whatever it was. And that's what moving out of your comfort zone, that's what stepping out of the boat does for you. So long as you dance here, you'll never know how big the dance floor is.
Absolutely.
You know. Yeah.
Now you are a social activist,
Yes.
motivational speaker.
Yes.
You are a musician.
Yes.
And you are an author.
Yes.
How did this come about?
If you haven't, observed already, I have a big mouth, and I've always had the gift of words.
Wow.
And it came naturally, like, like, hey, you're kulumalamdana, hey, you're papalamdana. And we say those things to our children sometimes, which is wrong, because for the longest time, I felt that my ability to speak was a negative thing, but that's my gift. That's God gives us all natural gifts that we don't need to think about it. You just wake up. What Beyonce says, I woke up like this. For me, I woke up like this is my capacity to use words, and I think that naturally all of those things, then if you take a look at being an author, a musician and a social activist, they require the ability to speak. And I didn't discover it until later in my mid-youth. I'm still a youth, I'm only 34. So in my somewhere in between, I was able to go, okay, so this capacity and this ability to speak and make sense when I didn't even think about the things I'm saying is actually a gift of God. That's what He wants me to use. And all I've done is find different platforms or different ways to manifest this gift of speaking. I come from a very musical family. My mom sings. My mom is besties with Uncle Mtunzi Namba and Abobut Lindelani, and so from that space, part of for me being babysat is that they would all bring their kids together in one spot whilst they, like earlier days before even about Dreas, whilst they were having a rehearsal, we were all just sitting here. So we've always been exposed. My mom randomly starts a song and there was an expectation that you would know the melody and you know the key and you know how it goes. So that for me was my first expression of myself, because it's what I grew up with. It's what was expected for me to sing. Like, my sister Bimbas, and it's a hard thing for her. Yeah, and it's a hard thing because everyone else sings in my family. And then, like I've said earlier, that the social activist, I think it's to honor my grandmother for all the contribution. Some people with the end of apartheid and creating the South Africa we know now, all of them went in the front row or in the limelight. There's a lot of people who were behind the scenes, and I feel like however big or small her contribution was to the struggle, it is therefore my responsibility to honor the freedom that I now have. It is now my responsibility to embrace the freedom. It's my responsibility to make sure the freedom maintains for my children and for children to come. It is my responsibility to make sure that every young person understands that they are more than the color of their hair or the color of their skin or how twangy their English is or how not twangy. All that you are is not based on other people's perception of what they see of you. And authorship is new, like it's very new. I didn't even think that I write. But I went through about 3.5 years ago, I gave birth very prematurely to my daughter, Zintle Grace. And she had to be hospitalized for 3 months, and past the 3 months, she then passed away. Thank you. And I think for me, of all the things that I'd gone through, that's probably one of the hardest seasons, because it again broke everything that I understood God to be. I couldn't settle with a loving father who would torture me for 5 weeks to be admitted in hospital, so that we tried to keep her in, and then who would allow her to live through the birth process, then to live through 3 months and raise my expectations and hope, and then completely unexpected walk into the hospital at that time at 31 and be asked to make a decision to turn off the life support on my kid. That for me was, what kind of God does that? How do I balance the fact that you say you are a loving God, and for me, from where I am, I feel like I've served you best as I know how. I've done the typical thing that we are taught. If you pray, if you fast, if you tithe, if you serve, then life is going to be amazing. And I'd done that. I'd worked with Nelson Mandela's 46664, and I'd run campaigns, and I'd worked with Indigenous communities in Australia, just trying to help multiculturalism within Australia. So not only had I done stuff in my own country, but I'd gone overseas and I'd been forging different things for girls. God, I've been good. I've been exceptional. Like, if you're going to do something nasty, like, you're not supposed to do it to me, because I'm supposed to be excused and, moved aside and put into the good batch, that I'm not going to endure such hardship. So it was a really, really tough thing. And when I struggled to then vocalize things that I wanted to say, I kept a journal and I'd write letters, dear God, and I'd say some bit nasty things. And I'd say, but they were all honest. They were all a reflection of a woman struggling to maintain her faith. They were all a reflection of, how do I love you, God? How do I pray when the one thing I've wanted from you, you weren't able to give it to me? How do I pray when someone says to me, I'm sick, can you pray for healing for me? How can I believe that my prayer for healing for you will work when after I've prayed for my kid and after everyone else from my church has gathered to pray for my kid, she didn't get her healing? How do I believe in miracles when I asked for a miracle and I didn't get a miracle? How do I read the Old Testament and believe word for word everything it says when I didn't see that transpire in my own life? So what the authorship thing is then, for now, I don't know where it's going to go from here onwards, is that all of that real and authentic and genuine struggles are captured in the book, where then I've just literally photocopied my journals. And the thing about that is, I want people to understand we have incorrect perception about God, our understanding of who He is, our understanding of His sovereignty and how we deal with that. The fact that He's a loving Father, but still reserves the right to be able to make up His mind about it. Do you know what I mean?
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. This is a very touching and a powerful story.
Yeah.
We are in conversation with Dawn, and we're going to take a music break. And when we come back, more about the journey of Dawn. Stay tuned. Welcome back. I'm in conversation with Dawn, sharing with us about her journey. Now, Dawn, where are you currently?
I am currently on a mission to help women find their restoration in God again. I am on a mission to help people break the incorrect understanding that they have of their dad, because that's what he is. He's the father, he's the dad, before anything else. I am on a mission of trying to speak specifically for now to women who drowned in the storm, who went through a hard time, who went through a loss. For me it was my kid, but maybe for someone else it was a marriage. For someone else it was a job. I'm trying to say you don't have to drown in the storm. That you don't have to. I use the scripture about Peter walking on water, because I feel like for me that's the experience. I did the impossible of navigating and walking literally on water through my situation and finding God's helping hand to hold me. And the process of that was this full understanding of who He is, but it was also this shedding of all these incorrect things, was the shedding of religion and the complete understanding of the Father's love. And I feel that where I am now is a credit to where I come from. And I think if there's anything I can do in this new season of my life is to say I'd love for everyone to experience God like I have. I'd love for everyone to have the understanding that I have. I'd love everyone to have the joy that I've now found. And I thought, 3 years ago, if we spoke, I was a completely different person. I was broken. I was shattered. Life just didn't make sense, and I think that there's a lot of people who go through different things in this world, and that's where they find them. And I think that if that's where you are, I want you to know that that's not the end of the road. I want you to know that there really is joy at the end of a tough season. But I think I want you to know that God says, rise up from the ashes. He gives us new seasons, and He can make all things, all things work out for good. I think the story that I talk about now wouldn't exist if I didn't go through the hardship. The essence of this message of restoration, I have authority to talk about it because I've experienced it. And who I am is now the combination of having experienced and understood God in a tough season. And I think that there's nothing greater than understanding the person who made you and brought you into this world. It will change how you see your life, and it will change, the different things. I still miss my kid. I felt pregnant because I wanted a child. And so the understanding that I have now hasn't changed.
Wow.
The pain, if you cut me open now, you'll see my heart is stitched in different places, because there is still evidence that once I went through a tough season, but those stitches have made me a stronger person. And I think I want people to really rise up, like it's the time, rise up, go through it, be authentic in your grief, be authentic in your pain, be authentic in your experience, because when you are real with yourself, you have the capacity to be real with God. Then He has the ability to change you and transform you into a different space. So that's my passion now, young girls and women and guys, but I relate more to females because I'm female myself. But it's to say, honey boo boo, it's okay,
Absolutely.
It's okay, and God has a greater plan beyond your pain.
But I believe your message is as relevant to a man as to a woman, because as you are sharing this story, I feel touched and motivated, and
Great.
I feel like I can face my future.
Praise God.
With that hope of knowing that it's not over until God says it's over.
It's never not, and I don't know how we can say this like again and again and again and again. God has you in the palm of His hand, even when you don't see it,
Absolutely.
even when you don't feel it, even when you don't want Him to be, but He still holds you, and that's the greatest assurance we could ever have in life, because then that Psalm says, then whatever happens in your life, you are going through
Absolutely.
things. You're
Absolutely.
not stuck in those spaces.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, my sister. It
Thank you
was
for
really a
having me.
blessing having you here in our studio and sharing your journey to
Thank
our
you.
viewers. Thank you very much, my sister.
Thank you. God bless you. Thank you.
Thank you very much for watching our program. This is been powerful, and I believe that you are blessed and your life will never be the same. Thank you very much for watching, and God bless you.